How's it going, everyone? Doc here at Eyes Wide Shot Gaming, and today we're going to take a look at if you should play Dungeons of Sundaria. Dungeons of Sundaria is an action-packed RPG where heroes adventure through epic dungeons facing fearsome creatures either solo or with a group. Master your class, loot everything, and destroy the foul creatures of the deep. Released in June of 2022 on PC and a year or so later in December of 2023 on console, we dive in to the world of Sundaria and discover a diamond in the rough. The game opens up to give us a character creation menu not unlike any other RPG or MMORPG we've seen before. We have 5 starting classes, those being Champion, which plays as your warrior type class, the Cleric, that is the run-of-the-mill healer, Ranger, Rogue, and the Wizard. Atop the choice of classes, we also get the option of picking a race, those being Human, Dwarf, Elf, Halfling, Orc, Goblin, and Draugr, Lizard People. Although the classes may impact your gameplay and style, the only difference race has is what you look at and how large your character is on screen. I've recently caved in and installed Dungeons of Sundaria out of sheer desperation for something new, and something that I can run with my friends. To my delight, I made the right choice. Now let's get all the issues out of the way first, that way we can understand what to truly expect out of this game. From the gameplay that I've watched of Dungeons of Sundaria online, the PC version may run well with little to no problems. The console version unfortunately has its fair share of hiccups. The consistent lag and screen freeze sets off alarms that my investment might have been a mistake and that I might have wanted to wait a little longer before purchasing the game just to let all the kinks and problems be ironed out. Instead, I figured to power through and see where it brings me. Aside from our main concern being that of frame freeze on an Xbox that could be somewhat an equivalent of the Frontier computer, we see that the developers opted to take the 1999 graphics path, along with a weak set of dialogue that tells a soft story of what we can only claim to be a diet version of every other MMORPG we played a decade ago. We can close our eyes on all of this for our sanity and push through to find that there is more than meets the eye in Dungeons of Sundaria. Although the lore isn't something to call home about, we do instead get to cut up boxy enemies with our teammates, spend a few hours in semi-engaging combat that we don't need to sweat over, and realize that there is no penalty for dying. We can just try again. We don't have to worry about stamina, mana, or anything that you normally would need to keep an eye out for in every other MMO. We instead can claim this to be a type of hack and slash with spells and loot that most looter-shooter games don't supply. Dungeons of Sundaria fills a void. May it be a small void, but one nonetheless that helps us get through whatever we might be going through. We don't need to sit down and focus on anything except the fun and somewhat inviting battles that we have around every corner of every dungeon. There are a total of 8 dungeons, each taking roughly 2 hours, which brings us to around 12 to 18 hours to complete the game. But what it lacks in longevity, it makes up in other affairs. The 3 levels of difficulty range from normal, which I suggest everyone to start at, hard, and nightmare, each of which offer different rarity of loot. As you progress through each dungeon, you realize a pattern that every other game in the genre follows. Defeat enemies, slay the boss, loot gear, and upgrade or replace the old gear. Rinse and repeat. This equation has stood the test of time, which is why it was applied here. But to my surprise, I've noticed that the developers over at Industry Games decided to implement perhaps their favorite aspects of other similar games in the genre. From something like Paragon points that we had in Diablo 3 to the exact same sound Wolves made when killed in one of my personal absolute favorite MMORPGs, as well as one of the first ones around, The Forthcoming. I'll leave a link in the description below if anyone wants to take a gander. But I digress. As I've said, behind the veil of mediocrity, we find a game that lets us relax instead of raise our blood pressure. We find a game that allows us to enjoy just playing without having the tension of surviving or messing up and leaving your team to be disappointed in you. At its core, we have a game that doesn't require our significant other to pop into the room to check on us because we've been yelling loud enough about dying or killing that our neighbors called the local authorities. We just have a game we can find peace in. Dungeons of Sundaria gets maybe 5 out of 10 from me. Not for gameplay, not for the hundreds of different enemies, not for the lore, music, or dialogue, but for reminding us that it's just a game. Dungeons of Sundaria runs at $14.99 in the Xbox Store. A small price to invest for a week or two of lackadaisical pleasure. Pick it up today and have a good time with this lazy river-esque game. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. And until next time, so long.